In this room, we explore attachment in the form of the memories we retain and how they influence our perception of the world. And to do that, we use the sense of smell. Here, 6 artists from around the world were invited to tell us a scent, an odor. Zainab will smell the scent when she sits down, when she presses this button.
Six contemporary artists chose scents that elicit an emotional reaction in them. You will have a chance to identify the emotions you attach to the scent, see how your reactions compare to others as you try each one. Each station features one unique artist selected scent for you to experience. Okay, start.
I don't remember exactly when I smelled cigarettes for the first time, but I think it was due to my Uncle Alan, who was a chain smoker. When we were little kids, Uncle Alan came back from the war. Something had happened to him during the war in France, they said. He couldn't stop crying. They didn't call it PTSD yet. They just said, "Go home to your family." So he came to live with our family, and he stayed in our attic, and he screamed for 3 years, and he smoked. He smoked all the time, and the smoke filled our house. It hung in thick clouds. You could see them drifting around the rooms in the sunlight. At night, I was always afraid the house was on fire and wondering if I could escape if that happened. What could make him scream like that for so long? I tried to imagine what he might have seen. After 3 years, Uncle Alan finally stopped screaming. He left and got a job and started a family. He became what we called happy. But he smoked for the rest of his life, and the smell of smoke stayed in the house for what seemed like years. When I finally learned to smoke, it wasn't so much about pleasure as about a certain kind of melancholy.
So beautiful. Truly. It was amazing.
How was it?
It was emotional, but not because the smell, it was of smoke, and so it brought me to my childhood, which was actually my parents' parties. And they were smoking all the time, but it was an association with laughter and joy, and so it's like I was intrigued by the smell, right? I'm not a smoker, so I'm not necessarily, I like smoke, but it's like intrigued, but it brought that. Then I heard the artist's expression of why she chose that smell, and it was a very sad story. It was a story of her uncle who came from the war and was traumatized and smoked for years, which made me very emotional to hear that story, but it was very intriguing how that same smell, for me had a positive story behind it.
Yes.
And for her, it had a very sad story behind it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so interesting. It was similar for me in certain ways. The smell was the smell of fresh laundry, which I correctly identified, and I do have associations to that smell in my own life of kind of cleanliness, orderliness.
Yeah, makes sense.
I can just visualize freshly folded laundry, so there's a kind of sense of order. But all of this underscores the fact that the same smell can produce completely different and in many cases divergent responses among people. And so what is really so interesting is what each person brings to this encounter. And so it's not as if a smell will elicit the same reaction. It's a very different reaction. And this is the part of the mandala that is about attachment. And emotions for us can really be great sources of attachment, because we tend to desire those things that are pleasurable, and we push away those things that are painful. And so those reactions are so basic. And what we know is that both the kinds of things that will cause pleasure and the kinds of things that will cause pain are always changing.
Very interesting.
And so there's nothing that really is permanent.
I have a question. Can one free themselves from the attachment that is triggered by smell? We talked about awareness can free us from the concept, let's say, any emotions, right? But smell is such a...
Basic.
It's like basic, it's interesting, it's almost...
Primal.
Primal, right?
Yeah.
Can we free ourselves from the memory of what that smell triggers in us?
It's not so much freeing ourselves from the memory. I think the memory will always be there.
Yeah.
I think the freedom comes from being hijacked, if you will, by these emotions. So the memory will be there, the emotions can also be there, but it's the difference between being in the river, where you're just in this turbulent river, versus being on the bank of the river and just watching the river.
Completely, I get it.
Both realized that they had a very different emotional reaction to the sense and personal memories that the artists had chosen to tell. Becoming aware that these different ways of perceiving the world exist, and making room for that diversity, moves us from attachment to our own views and towards the more empathetic wisdom of discernment.